This is Caffeinated Risk, the monthly podcast for security professionals by security professionals, focused on the principles of enterprise security risk management, exploring technology and business management issues and how they relate to information security risk. Once a month, two self-proclaimed grumpy security guys bring you analysis, insights, and interviews with leading security risk professionals to learn how they work through a project, a program, or their careers using a risk-based approach to security. Now here are your hosts, Tim McCreet and Doug Leese.
Welcome, Paul Smith.
Thank you.
I have known Paul for a number of years now. We actually met at a B-Sides meetup for the first time, because we met at CSAID after that. But
yeah.
Paul walked up to me and said, I really like where you're going with the CTF, but I think we could bring it up a notch. And
Nice.
yeah, each year it gets a little crazier.
Yeah.
But this isn't an ad about B-Sides. It's actually
Yeah.
Paul's doing a bunch of very cool things.
Mhm.
One of them is a new book.
Yeah.
And it's on pen testing, and I love hacking stuff.
Mhm.
I hate writing the reports. And the part that makes me really ill is when you have to quantify the risk in the report.
Yes.
So I really want to kind of zoom in on some of not only that good practice overall from a pen testing and risk explanation, risk consideration, but also specifically to ICS, what's different?
Mm-hmm.
Both Tim and I work in heavy industry.
Yeah.
So yeah, we live critical infrastructure security every single
Every
day.
day. Yeah.
Yeah, we call that the office.
Yeah.
I'm going to the office today, right?
Yeah.
Not as a plug, but Chapter 13 talks about risk and templating a report.
No. This is a plug.
This is the plug. Yeah.
No, we are actually here to talk about that very thing of the whole pen testing cycle. And even if they can't read your book and become as awesome as you,
No.
no, because it doesn't work that way, boys and girls.
No.
You got to practice a lot. If you're the consumer of a pen test,
Right.
I still think reading a book like yours, and I haven't even read it yet, but I know you, I'm thinking that's a strategy that everybody could do. I remember seeing Martin down at DerbyCon, and he actually had a talk one time called "What to Expect When You're Expecting a Pen Test,"
Mhm.
because his family was having an addition soon, so it's probably top of mind. And yeah, going through, how to do it, because there's so much out there, and everybody's an expert and all the rest. Really,
Yeah.
So kind of walk us through first, why did you think that we needed a book on ICS pen testing?
Well, yeah.
And what should we expect when we're expecting a pen test?
Yeah, it's interesting actually. I've been talking about writing a book for a while, and it wasn't until after the last B-Sides where we had the Cyber City that actually a publisher reached out to me and said, "Hey, would you be interested in writing a book about cybersecurity and specifically industrial cybersecurity?" I said, sure. And I delved in and I looked at what was in the market, and there's a lot of really good literature out there for, best practices, segmentation, different. There's a smattering of things in different books about high level stuff, but nothing really gets into the weeds of, like you said, what to expect when you're expecting. Also in good practice. So there's a lot of, I've come across a lot of IT pen testers. I've met and talked with quite a few. But when you start getting down into the deep pool of ICS pen testers, there's actually a very, very finite amount of talent. And I think on one hand, I can name a few, and I respect quite a few of them. I respect them all. I should qualify that. I respect them all. And then the ones that I don't know personally, like I can't really vouch for them. So let me, big disclaimer there. I respect you all out there. But
there you go.
Yeah.
I know.
Because they know how to get into your computer and change your life. So
Yeah,
be
exactly.
nice. Yeah.
Exactly. No, it's like I said, through the years, so like my background, like I guess I should start with how my background evolved into cybersecurity is. Growing up in Calgary, Alberta, getting you know raised in the oil and gas industry. My father was an electrical engineer, and I kind of by proxy watched all of his projects he was bringing home, and he worked in the research lab over by the University of Calgary for ESSO, so Exxon Imperial Oil, and so he was always doing super cool research, and I would get dragged to the lab and check that stuff out. And so by just by being so close to it, I kind of grew up and migrated towards that. He started bringing me on projects. We started doing some interesting work together. He retired, and then we decided to start a company. And his side was highly like I want to say thermodynamics. So he was focused on a lot of the thermodynamic side of metering and measurement and measurement imbalances. And I brought in more of the computer science side. So I brought in like digging through OSI Pi servers and historians and basically PIM systems, so production information management system, basically how all the data flows in a large enterprise system, because we would run into super crazy measurement imbalances. We'd find stuff that was just holistically wrong. And vendors would point fingers, producers would point fingers. They say it was, the gas company or the pipeline or the agate or whoever was doing the testing. Everyone was pointing fingers, but no one could find the problem. So we kind of got dragged into these weird red herring issues. And I would find we'd find the craziest things. And that's kind of how I got, so I ended up working for Lockheed Martin. So I kind of left the measurement oil and gas space and then went to Lockheed Martin doing industrial cybersecurity. And Lockheed had just bought a product called Industrial Defender.
Yes.
So I was working heavily on Industrial Defender and also doing pen testing with Lockheed at that time. And that's kind of how I evolved. I went from this crazy automation, doing projects and stuff, and doing research and finding issues in mismanagement and the operational side of oil and gas to next thing I know, I'm right into, industrial cybersecurity, because of my extensive background of doing all this crazy needle and haystack research, trying to find all these like little red herrings. And I'm like, oh, and I know exactly where that problem is. I'm like, look at this breach over here. You can just build the driver in Excel, use that Excel macro to jump through the OSI Pi historian and then start punching holes at the PLCs. And people are like, how do you know how to do that? I'm like, well, I was at Alliance Pipeline and I needed to figure out a way to get to the valves at Alliance Pipeline. And it was funny, if you guys know who Austin Scott is, actually Austin Scott who's at Dragos now, is sitting on the other side of the room. And this is before he was an industrial in cybersecurity himself. He was actually rewriting all the PLC code for the compressor stations.
Yeah.
So he was an automation controls guy. And actually, he's the one that was like, let's go to this CalSec or this, the CalSec thing for the very first time.
Yeah.
And that's where the little nugget of industrial cyber came around, from going to CalSec for the very first time with Austin Scott.
Wow.
And now look at us both. We're both crazy deep in this industry. And I think he just got promoted to
he's now
director of the research team over there at Dragos.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, well deserved. Yeah, we're really happy to see that Austin picked that up. So I think we're going to reach out to him and see if we can get him and Rob to come on the show at some time too.
I think we should. Yeah, I think we should.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because I think there's just a different pucker factor when things can actually kill people. They can actually be catastrophic. So when we're looking at risk and the impact, we're not talking a data breach anymore. We're talking loss of life and things like that. But the other part of that risk equation is there's got to be a motivated threat actor. So in the back of my mind, it's always running through it, like, who would actually want to break in to a railroad or a pipeline or something like that? What sort of risk models or threat models are you using to frame those testing guidelines up?
From a risk standpoint, well, I'll give you a real real life story. This is prior, once again, kind of prior to cybersecurity days. This is when we were doing measurement research. Found out that there was a backdoor in all the flow computers along a line. And I have to be careful about who I say and what I say.
Well, we can bleep out the vendor if you need, but better not to say.
Yeah. So there was flow computers all along this line, and flow computers are your custody transfer. They're basically your market movers. So if you say you got X number of cubes of gas or X number of, barrels of oil times the value in the market is how much money these companies are, pushing around their pipe. So we kept on seeing this crazy anomaly. My father and I we couldn't get our heads wrapped around it. And it was just the weird cycling of volumes being delivered, because the receiving refinery / gas plant, because I'm trying to be elusive here, would report the allocation back and say, okay, this is what we got. And it's like all the meters upstream of that facility are like, no, like the combined volume or mass don't balance out. Like there's a huge imbalance, and it's this, if you were to trend it, it swings very odd. And then it was myself looking at market pricing and stock prices and overlaid the swings in the stock price with the swings in the volumes. And I was like, oh, this doesn't look good. And then we dug in. Yeah, there was people were adjusting physical constants in the flow computer, correlating with the market price, so that they could actually drop the volume on the receivables. And then when the report came back, it would actually lower the stock price so they could short and then sell everything off, buy back. And then it was just crazy. And then this is all before cybersecurity. And this is before my career in cybersecurity. I'm like, I think you guys have somebody inside of your flow computers pushing configuration changes to it every month. And sure enough, we found it. I'm like, yeah, here's a record of it. And it's coming from this IP address from overseas. It's super crazy. But that's
crazy. That's crazy.
15 years ago.
Okay, so fair enough. Yeah, market price manipulation. Sure, money's a real motivator. I've never known a criminal yet to look askance at money. So, okay.
Another one that is publicly knowledge is when I was at Lockheed. There was the entire design plans, IP for the F-35 that was siphoned out of the company. And that's when Lockheed.
I remember reading about that. Yeah, I remember reading about that one. Yeah.
So that was, they doubled down on their security policies. And actually, this is the supply chain. The problem is there was so many, I think I don't want to misquote, but it was, I want to say in the tens of thousands of vendors that we were using to build that fighter at the time. And trying to keep a handle on all the credentials and who had access to the networks, and certain networks were flat, and there was acquisition. So they had backhaul inside of the Lockheed network for some stuff. And it turned out it was some employees that were siphoning out the knowledge.
Yeah. But they were likely getting paid by whoever wanted it, because they weren't going to build. They weren't building a plane in their backyard.
No, this wasn't a garage weekend kind of activity, right?
Lockheed pays well, but not as well as foreign national.
Yeah,
stuff.
As long as they've got a place you can go without extradition, you're good, right? Like that's
Well, they were getting away with it for I think like 3 or 4 years, so they were doing it, and it wasn't until. I'm not 100% sure of the internal story, but there was another software development that came out of this, and it's public. It's called OS Wisdom. I think it's called OS Wisdom. It's called Wisdom for sure, but basically it's like an insider threat. You can use it to like harvest everything and do models and risk models, and then you can open up cases on internal employees, and it was crazy. So you can run it inside your organization. It sucks all their data up as an employee, and then it'll run it against different threat models and say, okay, are you a high, like if we know that we're going to lay off an entire section of the company, there's going to be a higher risk for them to try to export IP and sell it to somebody else. So that was a lot of that. Actually, some of the interesting findings that came out of that software was like, I think it was suicide prevention. There was they could run it against like a suicide model where if they knew someone had high debts and they knew that they were on the cusp of being let go, that they could like turn over to a case manager and send them to HR before anything bad happened. So the software was really interesting, but it had multi uses out of it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I don't know. So I know I'm straying all over the place.
No, this is awesome to hear it, because I mean, we think about it. I mean, so in my head, right, at that executive level, you think about this stuff all the time, but it makes, for me, it hits home as soon as you hear the story of where it actually occurred, and here's what the impact was. Mm-hmm. Here's how long they were exfiltrating data out of a company. That's the stuff that scares the hell out of me. That kind of stuff, right? And to hear that, right, and to see and to talk to you, to go over, you were there when this was happening. That's that's why these stories, we have to tell these stories, right? We have to share this with the audience that listens today and beyond. This is the stuff they want to hear. Yeah.
Maybe you can go into a little bit about the safety systems, because we always hear about patch your stuff and patch your stuff. And it's like, we built it never to be patched, because that wasn't such a thing. But we also built it so that when it fails, it wouldn't kill anyone. Yeah. Which is totally different than how you do computer security in corporations.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So the redundant systems out there, the safety system, and it depends on like the classification and how it's set up. But and I guess we're talking about, we'll focus in on the Triton because that's the big one. And MITRE just did an evaluation of a bunch of industrial products out there. And it's super interesting because, how the attack occurred, and it came in through basically the corporate side, something compromised, and then them dropping in some Rockwell software that, was a invalid service. So there was a bunch of things through the entire attack chain that should have been discovered and triggered on, but it never was. And and there's companies now selling like the silver bullet, like we could have been the ones that stopped it. But in that case, I would say it's almost a freak accident that someone left it, like the key, because it's a physical ARM key that you have to turn. Like you have to physically turn it and keep it in like program mode, run mode, stop mode. Like, so what's the chances of that happening? I think this goes back to your risk matrix too, right? It's a low probability that people, and now even more so, that are, now after Triton happened, they're going in and looking and be like, okay, we have to make sure this programming key is in the right position, to make sure that no one, and there should be no backhaul that you can get to the security system, like the safety system shouldn't have a secondary connection. But one of the scariest ones coming from sour gas. I'm working in northern Alberta with all the H2S plants up there. If you override one of those safety systems and you had a release, and I was at a plant they called the Widowmaker, and during my course of working there was a lot of deaths that went down because of just H2S releases and other mishaps on the job and stuff like that. But and there was a full run safety system. They were testing it every day. Everyone had monitors, but you override that system, force a release, which actually, now that I think about it, wouldn't be too hard to do.
Wow.
And honestly, all it is changing a set point in the control system that has a backhaul to the internet at that time.
Yeah.
People are getting better, right? Getting better at releasing and removing dually connected machines. I even remember in this one plant, there was a machine there, and was their dual network machine, one on the control system and then one on the enterprise, because it was just a pain in the butt to check emails somewhere else.
Of course.
And once again, this goes all previous to my security background, and I'm like, oh, that just makes sense, that because I'm on the operational side. I'm like, it just makes sense. And now I look at it, I'm like, oh, that's how people die right there.
Yeah.
Paul, I got to ask, like you talked a bit about the when you're getting ready for and then starting the risk assessment or the pen testing process. But how do you, so I'm going to put my executive hat back on. How do you sell the executive at the other end of the paycheck that this is the value of this is X, and then get them and walk them through that value? Because at the end of it, because I've received a lot of pen tests over the years, some from Doug over the years, and without Doug being my translator, like what the, because I'm not that technical guy anymore, but understanding the concept of the technology and what it can and can't do for us, that's, and turning it into a business equation or turning it into a business discussion. How do you go about when you're dealing with the executives or when you're dealing with the sponsors for the test? How do you provide them the risk, or here's what you're looking for? Or when you find something, it's like, mother of God, you guys got to do X because here's what I found. Like, how do you get that mindset going, or get the executives engaged?
For sure. So I always talk about ROI, like your return on your investment, right? You want to know if I'm going to spend $75,000 on this pen test, or 125, depends on who you're using, Mandiant or some of the EY or whoever. Big guys are, it usually gets more and more expensive for whatever reason. So you have to really talk about what can be discovered. And every time I go into an organization, I find something interesting. So one of the last ones I went into, someone set up their AD servers and their trusts, and I was actually had a small AD server at a wellhead. So 30,000 employees were authenticating through a VSAT. And everyone's like, oh man, why is it taking forever to log into my computer? Like, this is disgusting. And of course, IT and the CIO came out and said, you know why? It's because of all the new security implementations, and the CISO didn't really have anything to say. And then when I discovered, I'm like, why do you have 30,000 connections going to this wellhead? And it was just a weird, because as I was doing the pen test, I was inside their network. I'm thinking something really weird is going on here. And then, sure enough. And I'm like, well, here's your ROI. You just need to break that trust because someone screwed up. And as soon as they did, they're like, oh, everything's better. And of course,
it's so much faster, right? So
and so that's where it comes into this whole gray model of communicating, like a gray box. And it's like, I think something in your organization's broken. And I think it's super important because it's causing issues, and it's not me. So even though I'd love to take credit that I did it, so I get paid, but I think something is broken. And so the ROI is, it's not just, hey, we're finding holes. And this is what I'm talking about, certain like ICS pen testers, because when we're down at that level, we'll notice a lot more than just, like we'll notice operational issues. And hopefully that's included in your remediation on the report. Like here, instead of just getting a report that says you need an IDS, or you need firewalls, or you need a NAC, or like, instead of all that like salesy kind of stuff, it's like, hey, look at this. I can tell that your PLCs, there's misaligned code in it because it keeps on writing and looking for registers that don't exist anymore. So obviously a third-party engineering company came in here, removed a chunk of code, and they're using an old Modbus map. So if you take that Modbus map and you actually take a automation company to come in and fix this up, like I can get access to these registers and do bad things, but I didn't, of course, because it's not part of the engagement. But hey, you know what? You'll be able to clean up a ton of noise from this segment of your network. And then it'll be funny because usually those guys are talking in higher levels about buying bigger switches and bigger pipe because the network's so slow.
So burdened.
Yeah. And I'm like, well, it's because you have all this bad code sitting around in these PLCs still. I've had some funny scenarios where I've pulled full asset lists that I've documented from just my methods of capturing and compared it at the end. Like, so you give your exit report, right? And you have all the findings and your remediation, and inside your findings, you have like this asset list. And then I'm sitting down at my like exit brief with them and go, okay, what's your list look like? And you compare, I'm like, ooh, you're missing quite a few. Or, hey, like there's subnets on there that, are you sure they're real subnets? Because they don't exist anywhere inside your network. It's like, well, Joe wrote this down 6 years ago, and I think it's still relevant to today.
And then somebody walks in, no, we sold those guys.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Crap, right?
Yeah.
So, well, that's the part that scares me, right? Because we talk about enterprise security risk management, this whole concept of ESRM, and that's, I mean, one of the critical steps is, do you actually know the asset you're trying to protect? And do you know who owns it? And would they care? Because if we're asking those questions in the middle of a risk assessment or a pen test and you don't know, I mean, that's, to Doug's point, that's the fail right off the get go, is that it's so damn tough to manage the program if you don't know what you're wrapping your arms around.
Yeah. And entirely true. So not only is it knowing the assets from a tech perspective, but knowing the process and impact. So I say to everyone, like, you can have a valve, and everyone's like, oh, I got control of a valve. I'm like, that's cool, but what does it control? Is it a disposal well? Is it a water well? Like, if you're sitting there opening and closing a water valve, it's like, okay, like, who cares? It's out in some farmer's field way out there, and that's cool, but you're not. Yeah.
You're watering the grass. You're not starting. You're not starting
exactly.
World War III. Right?
Yeah,
exactly. And I'm like, and they're putting that, like, I have access to a control valve, super critical. I'm like, oh, it's actually not critical. It's important because you shouldn't have access to that valve, but from a impact, it's very low because you're literally opening. Like, truckers pull up there at any given time of the day, take wastewater and shove it in, like, hook up and shove it in, and it spills out all over the place. And sometimes they forget to close the valve, sometimes they don't. Like, it's not really critical, but the fact that you have access to it is bad, but super low risk. Now you start, a mainline valve on a pipeline, and you're opening and closing that, then you're causing, the ultimate, like, cavitation of either, blowing up a pump or cavitating a compressor, or cavitating a pump and blowing up compressors. Like, that's bad. Like that I think that's a bad day for all of us if all of a sudden you have a pipeline blowout.
Right. Yeah. Well, Paul, can I ask, we ask all of our guests the same question, and it's really about this idea of diminishing returns. Is there a point where, as you're working with a client, or they're struggling to get past certain points, so you come back with the pen test and they start their plans to work through it? Do you find that there's that point of diminishing return with the approach that clients are taking, or that would you see them, if you go back again and again to help with the same client? Do you see that, or is that point? Do you get to that point?
Yeah, so it's definitely possible. Like, and it's funny because this industry that you basically engineering yourself out of a job is ultimately, if you're doing a good enough job, you're engineering yourself out of a job. And so the side part is actually selling, like, a twofold where you're helping tune and do correction and come in from the customer's perspective and help do some blue teaming, not operational blue teaming, but like mitigations, and say, okay, this is what my recommendations is, and just taking that recommendation through to the project phase. So that's how I kind of keep myself in a job, because you do these assessments or pen tests, and they close the gaps, and if they close the gaps sufficiently, they've checked their box for the year, and they'll reach out next year, unless they don't have to. And if they don't have to, they probably won't reach out, because it's a cost, and they just save part of their budget. And
sure,
it is. You are essentially always engineering yourself out of a job. Hence the reason why I say, people have to practice, and things are changing, and technology is changing. And I think we're going to see this industry, become much more IIoT connected, which means I have to sharpen my tool set. And at the end of the book, I talk about, there's no, push, click, hack methodology. Like, there's no easy way of doing it. The only way to get there is always be practicing and training, build your own lab, get familiar with the technology. Things are getting cloud connected now. You have a lot of industries out there moving stuff to the cloud. People are starting to use, like, Ansible to do configurations and controller pushouts. And I'm like, ooh, now I can start, now I have to learn Ansible and understand how Ansible works. And can I lever Ansible? Because Ansible's now the new golden software of the IT orchestration side. I'm like, ooh, I can use Ansible once you're saying, take it over the EPO side. I can use Ansible to push out a bunch of backdoors to everyone.
Yeah.
So you have to always be training, keeping up with that, or else if you traditionally are pen testing, you're kind of out of work.
And when's the book coming out, Paul? It's on pre-order for Amazon. When do you think it's coming out?
So on the US, you can get the hardcover, I want to say middle October, and Kindle in November. And then on Canadian, they only have the Kindle version to order. So .ca, Amazon.ca is only Kindle.
I'm looking forward to it coming out for you, man. That's going to be cool.
I appreciate that.
It'll be good to see come up. So
Awesome. Yeah, thanks so much, guys.
you betcha. Thanks for listening to the latest podcast from Caffeinated Risk. Make sure you visit our website, caffeinatedrisk.com, to stay up to date on what we've been working on. Our website has bios of our podcast guests, posts about topics we're passionate about, and even a library of reference material we find valuable in the work we do every day. And don't forget to subscribe to Caffeinated Risk on your favorite podcast service. This way, you'll be notified when we release our next podcast, and you can listen to our previous guests just in case you missed them. Thanks so much for listening to Caffeinated Risk.